Maya pressed her face against the cold metal of the ventilation grate, watching the Galactic Council guards march through the lower districts of Station 7. Their boots echoed against the rusted walkways, and their energy weapons hummed with barely contained power. She pulled back into the shadows of the maintenance tunnel, her stomach growling loud enough that she worried they might hear it. The 17-year-old human had been living in these forgotten spaces for 3 months now, ever since the debt collectors had seized her family's small apartment. Her parents had died in the mining accident on asteroid belt 47, leaving behind nothing but crushing medical bills and a daughter with nowhere to go. The station's welfare system had no room for another human refugee, especially one without connections or credits. Maya's fingers traced the small data pad she'd salvaged from a broken communications array. She'd managed to repair it using spare parts found in the station's waste disposal units. The device was her only source of information about the outside world, and lately, the news had been troubling. Reports spoke of increased activity in the Outer Rim, their massive fleets moving through space like hungry predators. They were an ancient species, one of the first to achieve interstellar flight. They stood 9 feet tall on average, with chitinous armor that grew from their own bodies and 4 arms that could tear through solid steel. For thousands of years, they had dominated this section of the galaxy, viewing other species as either useful slaves or obstacles to be eliminated. Only the formation of the Galactic Council 20 years ago had kept them from completely overrunning human space. Maya crawled through the narrow tunnel, following the path she'd memorized over months of scavenging. The station's lower levels were a maze of forgotten maintenance shafts, abandoned storage areas, and broken systems that no one bothered to repair. It was here, in the spaces between civilization, that she had learned to survive. She emerged from the tunnel into a large chamber that had once housed the station's original power core. The massive machinery had been removed decades ago, leaving behind an empty cavern filled with twisted metal and debris. Maya had made this place her home, building a small shelter from salvaged materials in one corner. It wasn't much, but it was safe and hidden from the authorities. As she settled down on the thin mattress she'd rescued from a disposal unit, Maya heard something that made her freeze. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the chamber, coming from somewhere deeper in the abandoned sections. It wasn't the usual creaking of old metal or the hum of distant machinery. This was something alive. Maya grabbed the small plasma torch she used for light and repairs, checking its power level. The device had enough charge for maybe an hour of use. She'd learned to be careful with power consumption, as charging opportunities were rare in the forgotten depths of the station. The sound came again, longer this time, and Maya could hear pain in it. Something was hurt and trying to stay quiet. Her first instinct was to ignore it and stay hidden. In her months of survival, she'd learned that curiosity could be deadly, but something about the sound tugged at her conscience. Against her better judgment, Maya crept toward the source of the noise. She moved carefully through the debris, testing each step to avoid making noise. The chamber connected to several other abandoned areas through holes that had been cut in the walls years ago, probably by salvagers looking for valuable materials. In the third chamber she explored, Maya found the source of the sound. Her plasma torch illuminated something that shouldn't have been possible. A dragon lay sprawled across the floor, its massive form barely fitting in the space. But this wasn't the mythical creature from old Earth legends. This was something far more incredible. The creature was clearly alien, but it possessed the general shape and presence of the dragons from human stories. Its body stretched nearly 30 feet from nose to tail, covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. 6 legs ended in clawed feet the size of dinner plates, and 2 enormous wings were folded against its back. Its head was large and intelligent, with eyes that glowed with an inner light. Maya stared in amazement, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Dragons were supposed to be extinct, wiped out by the centuries ago. The species had been one of the most advanced in the galaxy before there was destroyed in the Great War. According to the history files she'd read, no dragon had been seen alive for over 300 years. The creature's eyes fixed on her, and Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Intelligence looked back at her, ancient and powerful. But there was also pain and exhaustion in that gaze. Dark blood pooled beneath the dragon's body, and Maya could see several wounds in its hide that looked like weapon burns. For a long moment, human and dragon stared at each other. Maya knew she should run, should get as far away as possible before this creature decided she was a threat. Dragons had once been capable of destroying entire starships with their natural abilities. Even injured, this being could kill her without effort. But the dragon made no aggressive moves. Instead, it lowered its great head to the floor and closed its eyes, as if accepting whatever fate awaited it. The gesture was so human, so filled with resignation, that Maya felt her fear transform into sympathy. She took a cautious step forward, then another. The dragon's eyes opened but showed no hostility, only wary hope. Maya raised her hands to show she carried no weapons except the small plasma torch, which would be useless against a creature this size anyway. "You're hurt," she whispered, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. The dragon's response surprised her even more. Instead of speaking, images flashed through Maya's mind. She saw the creature flying through space, its natural abilities allowing it to survive in the vacuum between stars. She saw ships pursuing it, their weapons firing streams of energy that could melt starship hulls. She felt its desperation as it sought refuge, its growing weakness as the injuries took their toll. Maya realized the dragon was communicating telepathically, sharing its memories and emotions directly with her mind. The experience was overwhelming but not unpleasant, like having someone else's thoughts gently overlaid on her own. More images came. The dragon showed her its name, though the concept didn't translate well into human language. The closest approximation was, or perhaps. It showed her scenes from its past, memories of a time when dragons soared between the planets of their home system, their civilization built on harmony with the natural forces of space and time. Maya saw the day that came, their massive fleet blotting out the stars. The dragons had been peaceful, focused on art and philosophy rather than warfare. They were unprepared for the brutal efficiency of the military machine. In a single day, they're burned, and their species was scattered to the furthest corners of the galaxy. Was one of the few survivors, wandering alone through space for centuries, hiding from the fleets that still hunted any dragon they could find. It had come to Station 7 seeking refuge, but the station's defenses had mistaken it for a hostile ship and opened fire. The dragon had barely escaped into the abandoned sections, where it now lay dying from its wounds. Maya felt tears on her cheeks as the dragon's story unfolded in her mind. She understood loneliness and desperation, the feeling of being forgotten by a universe that had no place for you. In many ways, she and this ancient creature were alike. "I don't know how to help you," Maya said aloud, though she suspected could sense her thoughts as easily as her words. "I don't have medical supplies or knowledge of dragon biology." The dragon sent her another set of images. It showed her a plant that grew in the station's hydroponic gardens, a common healing herb that humans used for minor injuries. But the dragon's physiology could process the plant's compounds far more efficiently, using them to accelerate its natural healing abilities. Maya nodded, understanding. "You need me to get some from the gardens, but those are in the upper sections, heavily guarded." Projected feelings of gratitude mixed with resignation. It understood the risk it was asking her to take, but it had no other options. Without help, it would die in this forgotten chamber, the last of its kind lost forever. Maya looked at the magnificent creature before her and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I'll help you," she said simply. The journey to the hydroponic gardens required Maya to leave the safety of the abandoned sections and venture into the populated areas of the station. She waited until the third shift change, when fewer people would be moving through the corridors, then made her way upward through maintenance passages and service tunnels. Station 7 was a massive structure, home to nearly 1 million beings from dozens of different species. The upper levels housed the wealthy and influential, while the middle sections contained the main commercial and residential areas. Maya emerged from a ventilation grate on level 15, in a quiet corridor near the botanical research section. The hydroponic gardens were used both for food production and scientific research. Maya had worked there briefly as a child, helping her mother tend the plants before the family's financial troubles began. She still remembered the security codes for some of the research labs, assuming they hadn't been changed in the past year. Maya slipped through the darkened corridors, avoiding the main pathways where security cameras would spot her. The garden complex was vast, with dozens of climate-controlled chambers housing plants from across the galaxy. The grew in Chamber 7, a section devoted to medicinal herbs. She found the chamber she needed and carefully entered the access code her mother had taught her. To her relief, The lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, the air was warm and humid, filled with the scent of growing things. Rows of plants stretched out before her, their leaves glowing softly under the artificial sunlight. Maya quickly located the plants and began harvesting what she needed. The silver-green leaves felt cool to the touch, and she could sense the healing compounds they contained. She gathered enough to fill a small bag, being careful not to damage the plants or take so much that her theft would be noticed. As she prepared to leave, Maya heard footsteps in the corridor outside. She froze, her heart pounding as voices approached the chamber door. Through the transparent aluminum window, she could see two security guards making their rounds. "Strange energy readings in the lower sections," one was saying. "Command wants us to do a full sweep tomorrow." "Probably just another malfunction in the old systems," the other replied. "Those levels have been falling apart for years." Maya held her breath as they passed by without checking the chamber. She waited another 10 minutes before slipping out and making her way back to the maintenance tunnels. The return journey seemed to take forever, every sound making her fear discovery. When she finally reached its hiding place, the dragon was noticeably weaker. Its breathing was labored, and the glow in its eyes had dimmed considerably. Maya rushed to its side, pulling out the she had gathered. "How do I prepare this?" she asked. Projected instructions into her mind. Maya needed to crush the leaves and mix them with clean water, creating a paste that could be applied to the dragon's wounds. She used her plasma torch to sterilize a piece of metal sheeting, then carefully prepared the medicine as directed. As she worked, Maya found herself talking to, sharing her own story. She told the dragon about her parents, about the loneliness of life in the station's forgotten spaces, about her dreams of someday finding a place where she belonged. The dragon listened without judgment, occasionally sending waves of comfort and understanding through their mental link. Applying the paste to wounds the size of her entire torso was challenging work, but Maya persevered. As the medicine made contact with the dragon's injured flesh, she could see the healing process beginning. The wounds started to close, and color began to return to scales. "How long will it take?" Maya asked. The dragon sent her images of time passage, indicating it would need several days to fully recover. But even now, it felt stronger and more alert. The pain that had clouded its thoughts was fading, replaced by cautious hope. Maya settled down beside the dragon's massive head, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The adrenaline of her mission to the gardens was wearing off, leaving her drained. Seemed to sense her fatigue and projected feelings of safety and protection. "We'll figure out what to do next," Maya murmured, her eyes growing heavy. "Somehow." As she drifted off to sleep, Maya felt the dragon's presence in her mind like a warm blanket. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. She had found something worth protecting, and perhaps something that would protect her in return. But neither human nor dragon knew that their meeting had already been detected. Deep in the station's security center, automated systems had recorded the energy signature of telepathic communications. The readings were being analyzed, compared against vast databases of known alien species. Within hours, the results would reach the Galactic Council's headquarters. And from there, word would spread to the fleet that patrolled the sector, always watching for signs of their ancient enemy. The last dragon had been found, and the hunt would begin anew. But this time, it would have a human guardian willing to stand against impossible odds to protect it. Maya had no idea that her simple act of compassion had just set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The war between dragon and was about to begin again, and a poverty-stricken girl from the lower levels of a space station would find herself at the center of it all. Maya woke to the sound of distant explosions echoing through the station's hull. The vibrations shook loose debris from the ceiling of the abandoned chamber, and emergency lighting flickered to life in corridors that hadn't seen illumination in years. She sat up quickly, her mind still foggy with sleep, until urgent mental touch cleared away the confusion. The dragon was already rising to its feet, the treatment having worked better than either of them had expected. Its wounds had closed completely, leaving only faint scars across the iridescent scales. But there was tension in every line of its body, and its eyes blazed with alert intensity. Through their mental connection, Maya felt the dragon's explanation crash into her consciousness. They had found them. The station's automated systems had detected its presence and transmitted the information to Galactic Council headquarters, just as they were programmed to do. But the Council's databases had been compromised years ago by infiltrators, and now a hunting fleet was approaching Station 7. Maya scrambled to gather her few possessions while trying to process this information. "How many ships?" she asked aloud, though she knew would understand her thoughts just as easily. The dragon's response came as a series of images that made Maya's blood run cold. The fleet consisted of over 30 vessels, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to smaller but deadly hunter-killers. Leading them was the flagship of a legendary who had personally overseen the destruction of the dragon 3 centuries ago. "We have to warn the station," Maya said, checking her data pad for any news updates. Projected feelings of futility and bitter experience. The dragon had tried to warn other species before when fleets approached their worlds. Sometimes they listened, sometimes they didn't. It rarely made much difference in the end. The war machine was too powerful, too ruthless to be stopped by anything the younger species could muster. But Maya felt a surge of human stubbornness rise within her. "Maybe not, but we have to try. These people don't deserve to die just because they're in the way of your war." The dragon's mental response carried surprise and something that might have been admiration. It had forgotten that humans were capable of such idealism in the face of hopeless odds. Most species became cynical after enough exposure to galactic politics, but humans seemed to retain their capacity for impossible hope. Maya activated her data pad and tried to access the station's emergency communication system. As expected, her salvaged equipment lacked the proper authorization codes. But she had learned a few tricks during her months of scavenging, ways to piggyback on legitimate signals or exploit glitches in the system. After several minutes of work, she managed to patch into the station's public announcement network. Her voice, amplified by the speakers throughout Station 7, echoed off the walls of a million rooms. "Attention all residents. This is an emergency warning. A fleet of approximately 30 ships is approaching this station. Estimated arrival time is less than 4 hours. This is not a drill. Begin emergency evacuation procedures immediately. Repeat, this is not a drill." The response was immediate chaos. Maya could hear the sounds of panic filtering down from the populated levels above. Evacuation alarms began blaring, and the station's automated systems started announcing departure schedules for all available civilian ships. But Maya knew it wouldn't be enough. Station 7 housed nearly 1 million beings, and the evacuation ships could carry perhaps a tenth of that number. Most of the population would still be here when they arrived. Through their mental link, shared its memories of other worlds that had attacked. The pattern was always the same. They would demand the surrender of any dragons or dragon sympathizers. When none were produced, or when they detected their quarry's presence anyway, they would systematically eliminate all life in the area. They believed that other species were inherently inferior and deserved no consideration beyond their usefulness as slaves or target practice. Maya felt a cold determination settling into her bones. She had spent her entire life being overlooked, dismissed, and forgotten. But she would not stand by and watch 1 million innocent beings die because of a war that started before her species had even achieved. "What are the dragon's natural abilities?" she asked. "Not just the telepathy, what else can you do?" The dragon's response came as a flood of information that almost overwhelmed Maya's human mind. Species had evolved as creatures of space itself, capable of surviving in vacuum and traveling between stars under their own power. They could manipulate gravitational fields, bend light around themselves for camouflage, and generate electromagnetic pulses that could disable electronic systems. But more than that, dragons were living weapons when they chose to be. Their breath wasn't fire like in human legends, but rather focused streams of plasma hot enough to cut through starship armor. Their scales could deflect most energy weapons, and their natural flight capability in space made them incredibly difficult targets. The problem was that was only one dragon, and the approaching fleet had been specifically equipped for dragon hunting. Their ships carried weapons designed to disrupt a dragon's natural abilities, and their crews were experienced in the tactics needed to bring down these magnificent creatures. "Then we need to even the odds somehow," Maya said, her mind racing through possibilities. "What about the station's defenses?" Projected skepticism. Station 7 was primarily a civilian outpost with only minimal military capabilities. Its defensive systems were designed to deal with pirates and smugglers, not a full battle fleet. Maya pulled up the station's technical schematics on her data pad, studying the layout of weapon systems and shield generators. The station had 12 defensive platforms, each mounting plasma cannons and missile launchers. There were also 6 shield generators protecting the main structure and a small fleet of 20 automated defense drones. Against 30 ships, it was woefully inadequate. But Maya had learned during her months of scavenging that every system had hidden capabilities, ways to push beyond normal operating parameters if you were clever enough to find them. "The station's main reactor," she said suddenly, her finger tracing the power distribution network on her data pad. "If we could overload it in a controlled manner, channel all that energy through the weapons systems." Caught her train of thought and projected alarm. What she was suggesting would work, but it would also destroy the station. The reactor overload would give them perhaps 10 minutes of devastating firepower before the entire structure tore itself apart. "Better than letting the torture everyone to death," Maya replied grimly. "But we need to get more people evacuated first, and we need someone who can actually implement this plan." She thought of her mother's friend, Dr. Sarah, who had worked in the station's engineering section before the accident that had destroyed Maya's family. Sarah had always been kind to Maya, and she was one of the few people with both the technical knowledge and security clearance needed to access the reactor controls. Maya began making her way toward the populated sections of the station, with following behind through the larger maintenance tunnels. The dragon had to squeeze its massive form through spaces that were barely wide enough, but it managed to keep pace. The station was in chaos when they emerged near the engineering levels. Crowds of people rushed through the corridors, carrying whatever possessions they could manage. Some were fighting for places on the evacuation ships, while others had given up hope and were simply trying to find their families before the end came. Maya found Doctor in the main engineering control room, working frantically to manage the power distribution needed for the evacuation ships. The older woman looked up in surprise when Maya appeared in the doorway. "Maya, what are you doing here? Everyone thought you were dead." "I need your help," Maya said without preamble. "The fleet isn't just here randomly. They're hunting something specific, and when they don't find it, they're going to kill everyone on this station." Doctor's face paled. "The emergency announcement, that was you." Maya nodded. "I have a plan to stop them, but I need someone with reactor access codes." Before Doctor could respond, screams echoed through the corridors. Maya turned to see squeezing through the entrance to the control room, its massive form barely fitting through the reinforced doorway. The other engineers and technicians in the room scattered in panic, but Doctor stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Is that," she whispered. "A dragon," Maya confirmed. "The last one as far as we know, and the reason they are coming." Lowered its great head and projected feelings of greeting and respect toward Doctor. The woman gasped as the dragon's mental touch reached her consciousness, sharing just enough information to make her understand the situation. "They'll destroy the station either way," Doctor said slowly, "even if we surrender the dragon." "Yes," Maya said, "so we might as well make them pay for it." Doctor stared at the dragon for a long moment, then turned back to her control console. Her fingers moved over the interface with practiced efficiency, bringing up the reactor management systems. "What exactly did you have in mind?" she asked. Maya explained her plan to overload the reactor and channel the excess energy through the weapons systems. Doctor nodded thoughtfully, then began running calculations on her computer. "It's theoretically possible," she said after several minutes. "We could probably get 15 minutes of maximum power before the reactor went critical, maybe 20 if we vented the heat exchangers directly into space." "How much damage could we do in 20 minutes? Doctor's smile was grim. "Against normal ships, we could probably destroy half the attacking fleet, but vessels are heavily armored and shielded. We might take out 6 or 8 ships if we're very lucky." "Better than nothing," Maya said. "How long before the fleet arrives?" 3 hours and 17 minutes, Doctor replied, checking the sensor readings. Maya felt a surge of desperate determination. 3 hours to evacuate as many people as possible and prepare their last-ditch defense. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. Through their mental link, projected a new idea. The dragon could use its natural abilities to enhance the station's weapons, focusing and directing the energy with precision that human technology couldn't match. But to do so effectively, it would need to be connected directly to the station's power grid. "There's an interface port in the main computer core," Doctor said, understanding the dragon's suggestion through its telepathic communication. "It's designed for emergency system integration, but the power feedback could be lethal." Projected calm acceptance. It had lived alone for 3 centuries, the last of its kind. If it died defending these people, at least its death would have meaning. Maya felt tears stinging her eyes, but she pushed the emotion aside. There would be time to grieve later if any of them survived what was coming. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Doctor and her engineering team worked to modify the station's power systems, while Maya helped coordinate the evacuation of civilians. Positioned itself in the computer core, its massive form curled around the central processing unit like a technological dragon guarding a digital treasure. The evacuation proceeded faster than anyone had expected. Word of the dragon's presence had spread through the station, and instead of causing more panic, it had somehow given people hope. Humans and dozens of other species worked together to get the most vulnerable residents onto the departing ships. But even with everyone working together, they could only evacuate about 200,000 people. The rest would have to remain and face whatever came next. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the star system, Maya stood in the command center watching the tactical display. 31 ships materialized on the sensors, ranging from the massive flagship down to swift hunter-killers designed specifically for pursuing dragons through the void of space. The fleet's commander opened a communication channel, and the holographic image filled the center of the room. The leader was a giant even by his species' standards, standing nearly 10 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and natural armor that looked like it could deflect starship weapons. His face was a nightmare of chitinous plates and compound eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Insignificant creatures of Station 7, began, his words translated by the station's computers. "Our sensors have detected the presence of a dragon within your pathetic structure. You will surrender this creature to us immediately, or we will destroy your station and everyone aboard it." Maya looked around the command center at the faces of the station's remaining personnel. Fear was written clearly on every face, but she also saw determination. These people had chosen to stay, knowing what awaited them. Maya stepped forward and activated the communication system. Her voice, amplified and broadcast to the entire fleet, carried clearly across the void. "This is Maya speaking for Station 7. We don't surrender our friends to murderers. If you want the dragon, you'll have to come and take it." The silence that followed her words stretched for nearly a minute. Then laughter filled the communication channel, a sound like grinding metal and breaking bones. "A human child thinks to defy the Empire? Very well. We will give you a demonstration of what happens to those who stand in our way. All ships begin the attack. Leave nothing alive." The communication channel cut off, and Maya watched as the fleet began its approach toward the station. Energy readings spiked as the alien ships charged their weapons, preparing to deliver death to everything in their path. In the computer core far below, felt the approach of its ancient enemies and prepared for what would likely be the final battle of its long life. The dragon's connection to the station's systems deepened, its consciousness melding with the artificial intelligence that controlled every aspect of the massive structure. Doctor's voice echoed over the intercom. "Reactor overload sequence initiated. We have 22 minutes before critical failure." Maya gripped the railing of the command center and watched as the enemy fleet closed in. Around her, the station's remaining defenders prepared for a fight they couldn't possibly win. But they would not go quietly into the darkness. The last dragon had found protectors willing to stand against the void, and together they would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The war that had begun 3 centuries ago was about to reach its climax, and a poverty-stricken girl from the lower levels had just declared herself the dragon's champion. They were about to learn that humans, despite their youth and apparent weakness, possessed something their empire had never understood: the willingness to sacrifice everything for those they chose to protect. The first attack came like a hammer blow from the void. Streams of crimson energy lanced out from the approaching fleet, each beam capable of melting through starship armor like it was paper. The station's shields flared brilliant blue as they absorbed the incoming fire, but Maya could see the energy levels dropping rapidly on the tactical displays. "Return fire," she shouted, though she knew the command was unnecessary. Doctor and her team had already begun the counterattack. Station 7's defensive platforms rotated on their mounts, tracking the fastest-moving ships. Plasma cannons that had been designed for anti-pirate operations now channeled the full power of an overloading reactor. The beams that erupted from the station's weapons were 3 times brighter than their normal output, creating spears of blue-white fire that reached across the void. The first beam struck a hunter-killer amidships, punching completely through its armor and erupting from the other side in a shower of molten metal. The ship's reactor detonated seconds later, creating a brief new star in the darkness of space. Through the station's sensors, Maya watched as 2 more vessels were destroyed in the opening exchange. But there were still 28 ships remaining, and they were adapting to the station's unexpected firepower. The fleet began to spread out, making themselves harder targets while maintaining their relentless advance. In the computer core below, felt every shot that struck the station's hull. The Dragon's consciousness had merged with the station's systems so completely that the massive structure had become an extension of its own body. When energy beams carved through the outer armor, felt pain. When the station's weapons found their targets, the Dragon experienced fierce satisfaction. But more than that was learning. Through the station's sensors, it could see the ships with perfect clarity, tracking their movements and predicting their tactics with the wisdom of 3 centuries spent avoiding their hunters. The Dragon began to guide the defensive fire with supernatural precision, leading targets and anticipating evasive maneuvers before the enemy pilots even made them. A cruiser, confident in its heavy shielding, moved too close to the station's main guns, waited until the perfect moment, then channeled the reactor's full output through a single plasma cannon. The beam that erupted was so intense it created its own gravitational distortion, bending space around its path. It struck the cruiser's shields and simply erased them, then continued on to core out the ship from bow to stern. "Incredible," Doctor whispered, watching the energy readings. "The Dragon is somehow focusing our weapons beyond their theoretical maximum output." Maya felt a surge of hope as she watched the tactical display. They had destroyed 6 ships in the first 5 minutes of combat, far better than anyone had dared hope. But her optimism was tempered by the knowledge that they only had 17 minutes of reactor power remaining before the station tore itself apart. His voice crackled over the communication channel, no longer carrying the casual arrogance of before. "Impossible! A civilian station cannot possess such firepower." "Apparently we can," Maya replied, unable to keep the satisfaction out of her voice. "How many more ships are you willing to lose?" The response came in the form of a new tactical formation. The remaining ships arranged themselves into a complex 3-dimensional pattern, with the heavily armored dreadnoughts forming a protective shell around the smaller vessels. Instead of attacking individually, they began to coordinate their fire, creating a web of energy beams that no single target could evade. The station's shields buckled under the concentrated assault. Warning lights flashed red throughout the command center as power conduits overloaded and backup systems engaged. Maya felt the deck plates vibrating under her feet as the massive structure absorbed damage that would have destroyed a dozen normal starships. "Shields at 30%, reported one of the technicians. "Port side generators are offline." Maya gripped the command console harder, watching as the fleet closed to point-blank range. At this distance, even the station's enhanced weapons couldn't destroy the enemy ships fast enough to prevent them from reaching the hull. But had been waiting for exactly this moment. The Dragon's mental voice echoed through Maya's consciousness with grim determination. It was time to use abilities that no had ever witnessed and lived to report. Through the station's external sensors, Maya watched as space itself began to bend around its position. The Dragon was manipulating gravitational fields on a scale that human understanding, creating distortions that affected the fabric of reality itself. The effect on the ships was immediate and catastrophic. 300 killers that had been approaching the station's docking bays suddenly found their trajectories altered by invisible forces. They collided with each other at tremendous velocity, their hulls crumpling like tin cans. Two more vessels were caught in a gravity well that compressed their armor until their own weapons' ammunition detonated inside their holds. "What in the void is happening out there?" Kame's voice over the communication channel, for the first time carrying a note of uncertainty. Maya smiled grimly. "You're fighting a dragon, did you think it would be easy?" But the effort was taking its toll on. Maya could feel the dragon's exhaustion through their mental link, the strain of channeling such enormous forces while simultaneously controlling the station's weapons. They couldn't maintain this level of combat intensity much longer. The fleet, reduced now to 18 ships, pulled back to reassess their tactics. Maya watched as they formed a new formation, one she recognized from the historical files about the dragon's destruction. They were preparing for the killing blow, a coordinated attack that would overwhelm any possible defense. 15 minutes until reactor critical, Doctor announced over the intercom. Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of waiting for the to attack again, she activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the system could hear her words. "This is Maya aboard Station 7. I'm transmitting this message to all vessels in the system and to the Galactic Communications Network. Today, you are witnessing the last stand of the last dragon and the people who chose to defend it." She paused, gathering her thoughts, knowing that these words might be humanity's final statement to the galaxy. The claim they are the superior species, that they have the right to destroy anyone who stands in their way. But look at what we've accomplished here today. A teenage human girl, an injured dragon, and the crew of a civilian space station have destroyed 13 of their ships. We've proven that courage and determination matter more than superior firepower or ancient bloodlines. Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. "The dragon beside me is the last of a species that once filled the galaxy with beauty and wonder. The destroyed there because they feared what dragons represented, the possibility that evolution could create something better than themselves. But they failed to destroy what really mattered." Through their mental link, Maya felt surprise and gratitude. The dragon had never expected to find such understanding among the younger species. "Today we stand together," Maya continued. "Human and dragon, united against those who would exterminate anything they cannot control. We may not survive the next few minutes, but we've proven something important. The galaxy belongs to those brave enough to defend it, not to those strong enough to conquer it." She cut the transmission and turned to the tactical display. The ships were moving into their final attack formation, all 18 vessels coordinating for a simultaneous assault that would overwhelm even enhanced defenses. But something unexpected was happening at the edge of the star system. New contacts were appearing on the sensors, dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace in formation. Maya's heart leaped as she recognized the configuration of a Galactic Council fleet. "This is Admiral Sarah Martinez aboard the GCS Indomitable," came a new voice over the communication channel. "We received your broadcast, Station 7. The Council has voted for emergency intervention. All vessels will stand down immediately or face the consequences." Maya stared at the tactical display as more ships continued to arrive. The Council fleet numbered over 60 vessels, including some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. They had come in response to her broadcast, drawn by the sight of a civilian station standing against impossible odds. Its response was immediate and predictable. "The Council has no authority here. We are conducting a lawful hunt for a dangerous criminal." "Negative," Admiral Martinez replied. "The dragon is under Council protection, as are all residents of Station 7. You will withdraw your forces immediately." For a moment, Maya thought the crisis might be over, but she had underestimated arrogance and their hatred of dragons. Instead of withdrawing, his fleet turned to engage the Council ships, choosing to fight a hopeless battle rather than retreat. What followed was one of the most one-sided space battles in galactic history. The ships, already damaged from their fight with the station, were no match for fresh Council vessels with full shields and ammunition. Within minutes, 17 of the remaining 18 ships had been destroyed or disabled. Only its flagship remained, its heavy armor allowing it to absorb punishment that would have destroyed any other vessel. The commander, his empire's reputation in ruins, made one final desperate decision. He turned his ship toward Station 7 and engaged the ramming speed. "He's going to try to ram the station," Maya shouted. Even damaged, that ship has enough mass to crack our hull. Doctor's voice crackled over the intercom. Reactor is at critical levels. We can't maintain shields much longer. Maya felt's resolve hardened through their mental link. The dragon had one final card to play, but it would require the ultimate sacrifice. Through the station's sensors, Maya watched as presence began to separate from the computer systems. The dragon was preparing to leave the safety of the station and face flagship directly. "No," Maya whispered, understanding what the dragon intended. "You can't survive in space with your injuries." Its mental response carried centuries of weariness and acceptance. It had lived too long already, watching its species fade into memory while their killers prospered. If it could save these people who had shown such courage, its death would finally have meaning. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the dragon emerge from the station's hull. Its massive form seemed impossibly graceful as it moved through the vacuum of space, its scales shimmering with inner light. The creature that had inspired humanity's oldest legends flew toward its final battle with wings spread wide, a sight that no one who witnessed it would ever forget. Its flagship opened fire with everything it had, energy beams and missiles converging on the approaching dragon. But had fought these enemies for 3 centuries, and it knew every trick they might employ. The dragon twisted through the barrage with impossible grace, closing the distance until it was within range of its own devastating weapons. The plasma breath that erupted from its throat was like a star being born in the darkness. It carved through the flagship's armor as if it were tissue paper, gutting the massive vessel from bow to stern. But the ship's momentum carried it forward, and its final act was to detonate his ship's reactor just as the dragon reached it. The explosion lit up the entire star system, a brief flash that the local sun. When the light faded, both the flagship and the last dragon were gone, leaving only expanding clouds of plasma and debris. Maya collapsed into her chair, overwhelmed by the sudden silence in her mind where its presence had been. The dragon was gone, and with it, the last link to one of the galaxy's most magnificent species. But sacrifice had not been in vain. Station 7 survived, its million remaining inhabitants saved by the courage of a creature that could have fled to safety. The fleet was destroyed, their commander dead, and their reputation as an unstoppable force shattered forever. As the Council fleet moved in to provide assistance, Maya realized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The sight of humans standing beside a dragon against impossible odds had been broadcast to billions of worlds. Other species that had cowered before threats for centuries began to whisper that perhaps it was time to stand up for themselves. Doctor's voice brought Maya back to the present. "Reactor stabilized, we're safe for now." Maya nodded numbly, still struggling to process what had just happened. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. The last dragon was dead, and with it, something irreplaceable had been lost forever. Or so she thought. Deep in the station's computer core, something stirred within the quantum processors that had briefly housed consciousness. The dragon's memories, its knowledge, even fragments of its personality had been imprinted on the station's artificial intelligence. It wasn't truly alive, but it wasn't completely gone either. And in the expanding debris field where the dragon had died, scanners detected something that shouldn't have been possible. A crystalline structure unlike anything in known science, glowing with the same inner light that had once shone in its eyes. The battle was over, but Maya's story was far from finished. The girl who had defended a dragon was about to discover that some sacrifices plant seeds that bloom long after the one who made them is gone. 3 weeks after the battle, Maya stood in what had once been the station's computer core, staring at the quantum processing array where it made its final connection. The dragon's physical form was gone, but something remained in the crystalline circuits of the station's artificial intelligence. Sometimes, when she touched the interface panels, she could almost feel an echo of that ancient presence. The station had become the center of galactic attention since the battle. News crews from hundreds of worlds had arrived to interview the girl who had stood with the last dragon. Diplomats from the Galactic Council wanted to understand how a civilian station had achieved such devastating firepower. Scientists were fascinated by the readings they had detected during its final moments, energy signatures that suggested abilities far beyond anything in their databases. But Maya found herself avoiding most of the attention, preferring to spend her time in the quiet corridors of the lower levels where she had first met. She had been offered quarters in the upper residential sections, scholarships to the finest universities in council space, and even a position in the diplomatic corps. None of it seemed to matter without the dragon's quiet presence in her mind. Doctor found her there, as she did most evenings now, checking on the girl who had become something of a daughter to her since the battle. "The council representatives want to speak with you again tomorrow," Doctor said, settling down beside Maya on the makeshift bench they had constructed from salvaged materials. "They're still trying to understand what happened during the fight." Maya shrugged. "I've told them everything I know. Could manipulate gravitational fields, bend space around itself, interface with our computer systems. I don't know how it worked, just that it did." "They think there might be more dragons out there," Doctor said carefully. "Hidden somewhere in the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves." Maya felt a surge of hope at the possibility, followed immediately by grief as she remembered certainty that it was the last of its kind. Would have known if others survived. Dragons were telepathic across vast distances. It would have felt them. Doctor nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "What about the crystalline structure they found in the debris field, the one that's been giving off those strange energy readings?" Maya had heard about the discovery, but hadn't seen the reports herself. The council fleet had recovered something from the site where had died, something that easy classification. It wasn't quite organic and wasn't quite technological, but it pulsed with energy patterns similar to those recorded from living dragons. "They want me to examine it," Maya said finally. "They think my connection with might help them understand what it is." "Will you do it?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering. Part of her wanted nothing to do with whatever the scientists had found. She had already lost one friend to the war between dragons but another part of her, the part that still felt an echo of presence in the station's computers, whispered that this might be important. "I'll look at it," she said, "but not here. If there's even a chance that thing is alive, I won't let them experiment on it." Doctor smiled. "I thought you might say that. I've already arranged for a private research facility on the moon of 7C. The council has agreed to let you study the artifact there, with whatever assistance you need." Maya looked at her in surprise. "You did that for me." "You saved 1,000,000 lives, Maya. I think that earns you the right to make some demands." 2 days later, Maya found herself aboard a council transport ship, traveling to the research facility Doctor had arranged. The moon of 7C was a barren world, its surface by ancient impact craters and volcanic activity. But beneath the surface, the council had constructed a state-of-the-art research complex, its laboratories shielded from outside interference and equipped with the finest scientific instruments in known space. Maya was met at the landing pad by Doctor, who had spent her career studying extinct species. The middle-aged woman had kind eyes and gentle hands, but Maya could sense the excitement beneath her professional demeanor. "Thank you for coming," Doctor said as she led Maya through the facility's corridors. "What we've found is unlike anything in the scientific literature. We need someone who actually communicated with a dragon to help us understand it." They entered a large laboratory where the crystalline structure rested in a transparent containment field. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she saw it for the first time. The object was roughly the size of a human head, its surface covered in faceted planes that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Deep within its translucent depths, lights pulsed in complex patterns that reminded her painfully of heartbeat. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered, moving closer to the containment field. "And completely impossible," Doctor added. "The material isn't quite crystal, isn't quite metal, and isn't quite organic tissue. It exists in a quantum superposition that our instruments can barely measure. But the really interesting part is what happens when we try to scan its interior." Doctor activated a holographic display that showed the results of various sensor sweeps. The images were confusing at first, layer upon layer of complex structures that seemed to fold in on themselves. But gradually, Maya began to recognize patterns that looked almost like neural networks, information pathways that branched and connected in ways that reminded her of brain tissue. "You think it's some kind of mind?" Maya asked. "We think it might be a memory storage device," Doctor replied. "Dragon neurology is completely unknown to us, but this structure shows signs of containing massive amounts of information. Genetic data, perhaps, or even complete consciousness patterns." Maya felt her heart racing as the implications sank in. "You think stored part of itself in there before it died?" "It's possible. Dragons were known to have abilities we don't understand. If one of them was dying, it might have been able to preserve its essence somehow. Maya approached the containment field, studying the pulsing lights within the crystal. There was something familiar about the rhythm, something that tugged at the corner of her memory. She had felt that pattern before during her deepest connection with mind. "Can I touch it?" she asked. Doctor looked uncertain. The energy readings spike whenever anyone approaches the containment field. We're not sure what kind of effect direct contact might have. "Never hurt me," Maya said simply. "If this is really part of the dragon, it won't hurt me either." After a moment of hesitation, Doctor deactivated the containment field. Maya reached out with trembling fingers and gently touched the crystal's surface. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Maya's consciousness was suddenly flooded with images, memories, and emotions that weren't her own. She saw the dragon as it had been before the Kame, vast cities that floated in the clouds of a gas giant, their architecture flowing like living crystal. She felt the joy of flight between the stars, the deep satisfaction of understanding the fundamental forces that governed reality. But more than memories, she felt presence. Was there, not truly alive but not completely gone either. The dragon had somehow compressed its entire consciousness into the quantum structure of the crystal, preserving itself at the moment of death. "Maya," Doctor's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Maya, your life signs are spiking. I need you to let go of the crystal." But Maya couldn't let go. Through the connection, she felt trying to communicate something of desperate importance. The dragon's memories were fragmentary and confused, but underneath them was a message that made her blood run cold. They weren't finished. His fleet had been only one small part of a much larger force, and news of their defeat had reached the high command. An armada was already being assembled, hundreds of ships carrying weapons specifically designed to crack space stations and destroy entire star systems. They would not underestimate their enemies again. But there was hope hidden within its memories. The dragon had discovered something during its centuries of wandering, a secret that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Hidden in the ruins of an ancient civilization, protected by technology that made even dragon science seem primitive, there was something waiting. Maya felt the images pouring into her mind. A vast structure drifting in the void between galaxies, its surface covered with inscriptions in a language that predated both dragon and civilizations. Had found it decades ago, but had lacked the knowledge to activate whatever lay within. But the dragon's connection to human technology during the battle had given it new understanding, revealing how the ancient systems might be awakened. "The builders," Maya whispered, the word coming from memories. "They left something behind." The connection suddenly broke as Doctor physically pulled Maya away from the crystal. The young woman collapsed to her knees, her mind reeling from the flood of alien memories and knowledge. "What did you see?" Doctor demanded, helping Maya to a nearby chair. Maya struggled to organize the chaotic jumble of information that had shared with her. "There's another fleet coming, bigger than anything we've seen before, but there's something else, something that might help us stop them." She told Doctor about the ancient structure had discovered, the technology of the mysterious builders who had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. As she spoke, Maya felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place in her mind. "The builders were the first species to achieve true galactic civilization," she explained, drawing on knowledge that was somehow now part of her. "They explored every star system, every world, and then they simply disappeared. But they left behind guardians, automated systems designed to preserve the galaxy's younger species from threats they couldn't handle on their own." Doctor leaned forward, fascinated despite the fantastic nature of Maya's story. "And you think this structure found is one of these guardians?" "I think it's the central command node for all of them," Maya replied. "The builders knew that someday a species might arise that was too aggressive, too destructive to be allowed to spread unchecked. They prepared for that possibility." Maya stood up, feeling strength returning to her legs. "I need to get to that structure. Its memories show me where it is, but I need a ship capable of intergalactic travel." "Maya, you're talking about leaving the galaxy entirely. The nearest intergalactic void is light years across. Even with the fastest ships available, such a journey would take months." "Then we'd better start soon," Maya said, her voice carrying new determination. "Because when the Armada arrives, they won't be content to just destroy one space station. They'll glass every human world they can find and then move on to the rest of the Council species." Doctor stared at her for a long moment, then activated her communication console. "I'm calling the council emergency session. If you're right about what's coming, they need to hear this immediately." As Doctor made her calls, Maya turned back to the crystal that contained preserved consciousness. The dragon's sacrifice had been greater than anyone realized. Not only had it given its life to save Station 7, but it had also passed on the knowledge needed to save the entire galaxy. Maya gently touched the crystal again, this time prepared for the mental connection. She felt its presence more clearly now, and with it came a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life since the dragon's death. "I understand," she whispered to the preserved consciousness. "I'll finish what you started." The crystal pulsed once in response, and Maya felt a wave of gratitude and affection wash over her. It was gone, but its legacy lived on. The last dragon had found a worthy successor, and together they would face whatever darkness was coming for them all. Maya had thought her story was over when died protecting the station, but she was beginning to understand that it had only just begun. The girl who had defended a dragon was about to become something the galaxy had never seen, a human with the memories and knowledge of one of its most ancient species. They were coming with their greatest fleet, confident that nothing could stand against their combined might. But they had never faced the legacy of the Builders, activated by dragon wisdom and human courage. The final war for the galaxy's future was about to begin, and Maya would stand at the center of it all. The voyage to the edge of the galaxy took 6 weeks aboard the Council's most advanced exploration vessel, the Pathfinder. Maya spent most of the journey in deep meditation with crystallized consciousness, learning to navigate the dragon's vast repository of memories and knowledge. The process was exhausting and sometimes painful, as her human mind struggled to comprehend concepts that had evolved over millions of years of dragon civilization. Captain, the Pathfinder's commander, remained skeptical of their mission even as they approached the coordinates Maya had provided. "We're about to leave the galaxy entirely," he announced over the ship's intercom. "Once we cross into the intergalactic void, we'll be completely cut off from Council space. If something goes wrong out here, no one will ever find us." Maya stood on the bridge, watching as the last stars of their galaxy fell away behind them. Ahead lay only darkness, punctuated by the distant glow of neighboring galaxies millions of light-years away. According to memories, the Builder's structure was hidden in this vast emptiness, protected by stealth technology that made it virtually undetectable. "Sensors are picking up gravitational anomalies ahead," reported the ship's science officer, Lieutenant. "There's something massive out there, but I can't get a clear reading." Maya closed her eyes and reached out through her connection to consciousness. The dragon's knowledge flowed through her mind, showing her how to recognize the signs of Builder technology. The structure they were seeking didn't just hide from sensors. It existed in a state of dimensional flux that made it difficult for normal matter to interact with it. "Adjust the sensor array to detect quantum fluctuations in the 7.3 range," Maya instructed. "The Builders used a form of camouflage that bends space-time around their installations." Lieutenant looked puzzled but followed her instructions. Within moments, the main display filled with the image of something that easy description. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but its shape seemed to shift and change as they watched. One moment it appeared to be a perfect sphere, the next a complex geometric form covered in spiraling towers and crystalline formations. "My God," Captain whispered, "how old is that thing?" "According to memories, the Builders constructed their guardian stations over 10 million years ago," Maya replied. "This one has been waiting here all this time for someone to wake it up." As the Pathfinder approached the ancient structure, Maya felt a tingling sensation in her mind. The Builder installation was scanning them, its alien intelligence probing their ship and its occupants. She could sense its vast artificial consciousness awakening from eons of dormancy, ancient protocols stirring to life. "I'm detecting massive energy buildup inside the structure," Lieutenant reported, his voice tight with concern. "Whatever's in there is powering up." Maya placed her hand on crystal, which she had brought aboard for this crucial moment. Through their connection, she felt the dragon's knowledge guiding her, showing her how to communicate with the Builder systems. "Open a channel," she told the communications officer. "All frequencies." When the connection was established, Maya spoke words that came from deep within memories, phrases in a language that predated human civilization by millions of years. The sounds were almost impossible for human vocal cords to produce, but somehow she managed to approximate them. The response was immediate. The chaotic energy readings from the builder's structure suddenly stabilized, and a new presence touched Maya's consciousness. It was vast and ancient beyond human comprehension, but also curious and surprisingly gentle. The builder artificial intelligence spoke directly into her mind, its thoughts translated through linguistic knowledge. "Welcome, heir of the Star Singers," came the alien voice. "We have waited long for one who carries the old wisdom. What brings you to this place between worlds?" Maya struggled to organize her thoughts in a way the ancient intelligence could understand. Through memories, she shared images of their history of conquest and destruction, and the massive armada that was even now preparing to launch the final war against the younger species. The builder intelligence absorbed this information in seconds, processing it through databases that contained the history of 1 million civilizations. When it responded, Maya felt a wave of profound sadness mixed with grim determination. "The Dominators rise again," it said, using a term from the earliest galactic records. "We had hoped they would learn wisdom during their exile, but they remain as they were in the beginning. The protocols are clear. The Guardian network must be activated." Through her connection to the builder system, Maya felt something awakening throughout the galaxy. Hidden installations that had slumbered for millions of years began to stir, their vast machines coming online with purpose that transcended mortal understanding. She saw flashes of ancient weapons that could shatter planets, defense grids that spanned entire star systems, and technologies that made even dragon science seem primitive. "You carry the memories of a Star Singer," the builder intelligence continued. "This grants you authority over the Guardian network, but such power comes with responsibility. The weapons we created can preserve life or destroy it utterly. The choice will be yours." Maya felt the weight of that responsibility settling over her like a physical burden. She was 18 years old, a former scavenger from the lower levels of a space station, and she was being offered control over technology that could reshape the galaxy. "I don't want to destroy anyone," she said aloud, though she knew the builder intelligence could hear her thoughts directly. "I just want to protect the innocent species from those who would exterminate them." "Wisdom speaks through youth," came the reply. "This is why the Star Singers chose to preserve their knowledge in one such as you. We will prepare the Guardian network for activation, but the final decision to use it will remain with you." Over the next several hours, Maya found herself integrated into the builder systems in ways that made her connection with seem simple by comparison. Her consciousness expanded to encompass monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy, each one capable of tracking the movement of entire fleets. She felt the Guardian installations powering up their ancient weapons, systems that had waited 10 million years for this moment. Through the network, Maya watched as the Armada gathered in the dead space between star systems. 400 ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything that had participated in the battle at Station 7. At their head flew the new flagship of Supreme, Superior, and the architect of the original Dragon genocide. The Armada was preparing to split into smaller fleets, each one tasked with destroying a different species. They had decided that the younger races had become too dangerous to be allowed to develop further. They would eliminate all potential threats in a series of coordinated strikes that would leave the galaxy empty, except for those species strong enough to serve as slaves. "They're going to begin their attack in less than 24 hours, Maya announced to the Pathfinder's bridge crew. "The lead elements are already moving toward human and space." Captain studied the tactical displays that Maya was now able to project directly from the Guardian network. "Even with our entire fleet, we couldn't stop a force that size. They have us outnumbered 50-1. Maya nodded, feeling memories stir as she contemplated their options. The dragon had always believed in the possibility of redemption, even for enemies as brutal as the. But sometimes, when faced with absolute evil, the only moral choice was to stand against it with absolute force. "The Guardian network is ready," Maya said quietly. "I can activate weapon systems that would destroy the entire Armada in minutes. But once I do that, I'll have started a war that might not end until one side or the other is completely extinct." She felt the builder intelligence waiting patiently for her decision, ready to unleash devastation beyond imagination if she gave the command. But Maya found herself hesitating, remembering something had shared with her during their first meeting. Even the most brutal species were capable of change, given time and motivation. They had spent centuries believing they were the rightful rulers of the galaxy, but perhaps there was another way to show them the error of their thinking. Can the Guardian Network capture their ships instead of destroying them? Maya asked the Builder Intelligence. Such precision is possible, came the reply, but it would require enormous energy expenditure and precise timing. The risk of failure is significant. Maya felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Always said dragons were creatures of precision. Let's show these what that really means. The battle that followed would be remembered as the most extraordinary military engagement in galactic history. As the Armada moved to attack positions throughout Council space, the Guardian Network activated for the first time in 10 million years. The ancient installations didn't reveal themselves gradually or announce their presence with dramatic flourishes. One moment, they were alone in the void, confident in their overwhelming superiority. The next, 400 ships found themselves trapped in gravity wells that every known law of physics. Maya, her consciousness spread across the entire Guardian Network, orchestrated the capture with surgical precision. Each vessel was enveloped in a containment field that neutralized their weapons and life support systems, leaving them helpless but unharmed. The mighty armada that had planned to exterminate entire civilizations was reduced to floating metal coffins in the span of 3 minutes. Supreme's voice crackled across the communication channels, filled with rage and disbelief. What sorcery is this? No species possesses such technology. Maya opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the captured armada. Her voice, amplified by builder technology, reached across the void with the authority of eons. This is Maya, speaking for the Guardian Network that has watched over this galaxy for 10 million years. You came here to commit genocide against species that never threatened you. You planned to wipe out entire civilizations because they dared to grow beyond your control. She paused, feeling the attention of 400,000 warriors focused on her words. But you made a mistake. You assumed that might makes right, that superior technology grants the right to destroy those weaker than yourselves. You forgot that this galaxy has seen species rise and fall for millions of years, and that the truly advanced civilizations are those that choose to protect rather than destroy. Through the Guardian Network, Maya began transmitting images directly to the ships. She showed them the history their own leaders had hidden from them, the beauty of the dragon civilization before its destruction, the artistic achievements of a dozen species they had eliminated, the scientific discoveries that had been lost when they burned entire worlds. The species you call inferior have achieved things your empire never dreamed of, Maya continued. They create beauty where you see only resources to exploit. They build alliances where you see only opportunities for conquest. They choose cooperation over domination because they understand something your warriors never learned. Maya felt consciousness stirring within the crystal, adding its voice to her words. True strength isn't measured by your ability to destroy others. It's measured by your willingness to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The response from the Armada was immediate chaos. Some ships called for immediate surrender, while others demanded that their warriors fight to the death rather than submit to alien authority. But Maya had prepared for this reaction, and the Guardian Network responded with displays of power that left no doubt about the consequences of continued resistance. Ancient installations throughout the galaxy revealed themselves, their weapons systems trained on colonies and military bases. The message was clear. Continued aggression would result in the complete elimination of their civilization. Supreme, faced with the choice between surrender and extinction, made the only decision that a rational being could make. The Armada stood down, their weapons powered down, and their crews prepared for whatever judgment awaited them. But Maya surprised them with her next announcement. Instead of demanding unconditional surrender or imposing harsh punishment, she offered something they had never expected, the chance to prove they were capable of change. You will return to your and dismantle your war machine, Maya declared. Your species will contribute to galactic civilization instead of trying to dominate it. In return, the Guardian Network will protect your worlds just as it protects all others. You will be part of the community of species, not its rulers. The process of transforming society would take generations, but Maya had time. The Guardian Network was patient, and it would watch over the galaxy for as long as necessary to ensure that peace endured. The girl who had started as a scavenger in the forgotten spaces of a space station had become the guardian of galactic civilization. As the Pathfinder began its journey back to Council space, Maya stood on the bridge holding Crystal. Through their connection, she felt the dragon's satisfaction and pride. Together, they had accomplished something that neither could have achieved alone. They had saved the galaxy not through destruction, but through the demonstration of what true strength could accomplish. The war between dragons was finally over, ended not by genocide but by understanding. And in the quiet corridors of Station 7, in the research laboratories where scientists studied builder technology, and in the hearts of beings across 1,000 worlds, the legend would grow of a poverty-stricken girl who defended a dragon and changed the course of galactic history forever.